Good morning. It is, I think, Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022. Oh my God. How about that? That is such a cool number. It's the 22nd on the, 2022. I didn't realize that. That's actually pretty cool. 9:50 a.m. in my neck of the woods. And I'm really humbled. I cannot believe the numbers of people that are checking me out and what I am bringing to the table. And I've been trying to bring to a table for a very long time on TikTok. I swear to God, I've mentioned this last week, but I usually go to TikTok to lose hours and watch great people dance and sing and have fun and drop huge airs and wipe out really hard and great athletes and superhumans and all that kind of stuff. But I would never in a million years have thought that in less than 2 weeks, we'd have close to 140K views with really a great effort by people that are behind me, with me, walking hand in hand with me, but for all the right reasons. And I think that theme is going to hopefully propel me forward to say some things that are worthwhile for your eyes and ears today. Because again, what we need to do is we need to generate a massive cathartic movement in the United States that constitutes the tens of millions of Americans that have gotten completely destroyed by the system of criminality, theft, deception, and this diabolical scheming by the power that includes the media that continues to basically piss on everyone's head and telling us it's rain. I got tired of them pissing on my head telling me it's rain because they must have thought I was some kind of new fool. That's what led me on this amazing journey. And quite frankly, if I could try to get everybody who's tuning into this to our YouTube channel to check out Patrick Lovell Truth Bombs the Con, that would be very helpful as well. Because of course you get to see 3-minute clips with some really, funny, caricatures of stuff that my friend puts on here, which really makes it fun and lively to watch. But at the same time, I mean, this is some really important stuff. And the truth that I'm bringing to you is what everybody in media, either doesn't know or doesn't want you to know. And there's a whole lot of things, regarding that. Look, I'm a muckraker. I've said it several times for those of you just turning in. You can think of me in the tradition of Upton Sinclair and Hunter S. Thompson. If you don't know who that is, I wear this cap a lot now, and I've actually worn it a lot over the last 10 years. You'll hear a lot of movie reference, a lot of pop culture references, particularly on television, because I am a producer, and I do love to watch, like the rest of us, really good work. It's been a bit of a renaissance in the television long form series mediums, and yeah, I'm a big fan of Peaky Blinders. I don't wear this hat because of Peaky Blinders. I actually got this hat from my grandfather, and it has existed since the 30s. And my grandfather was probably the most important influence in my life. I mean, he used to say incredible things. He was an independent business guy. He was a wildcatter down in Houston, Texas. He was originally from New York. And he was actually a showman in New York. He was a Wall Street broker in the 20s and the 30s, basically lived a great Gatsby kind of lifestyle, only to be blown up. And then he went down south to become an oil man. And he used to have a lot of fond sayings that have stuck with me my entire life. The first one is in terms of business. We both loved to golf back in the day. And he used to say, you drive for show and you putt for dough. But the one saying that he said with me that stayed with me forever, and I actually opened up my first documentary film, 413, Waking Up the American Dream, with this. He said, Patrick, I love Manhattan. I love the skyscrapers of Manhattan. I love the Rocky Mountains, and I love the 4th of July because it always leaves you looking up. I grew up an optimist and somebody who firmly believed in the American dream and something that would always be out there. And it was just this exhilarating rush to always chase for the American dream. And I've been doing it for a long time, and I've achieved it at different parts of my life. And then I've fallen on hard times like so many others through this incredible revelation that I am awakening you to, not to borrow from Russell Brand, who's Mr. Comedian and Chasing the Dragon, who doesn't want to know the real truth of what underscores everything that's become our country. The thing that I really have to impress at the beginning of this is please go to www.thecon.tv. Watch it. It's the truth that they don't want you to know. It begins with the most vulnerable amongst us who got targeted by a system of criminality that constitutes what our entire financial system has become and the entire legal system has played ball with, including our government. We don't have separation of powers. We're all under the thumb of this financial hijacking of the United States, and everything else is just bullshit. It begins and ends with the Federal Reserve's monetary policy, how it runs through the system through gatekeepers like BlackRock, who have been there for a long time, who pump it into a ginormous fraudulent system that keeps the money at the top for those that are schooling us. And for those of you who are like me, who have a college education, who came from the generation of belief in the dynamism of the United States, that we're always constantly improving and moving forward, and see a need, fill a need, sort of entrepreneurialism and business activity that provides a rising tide raises all ships. And I've learned throughout the course of the last 10, 12 years that we have progressively gotten closer and closer and closer to all of the power and control in the hands of the few. That's the opposite of the nature and the notion of, really, quite frankly, why the Federal Reserve was created in the first place, which was to create independent banks in separate regions, 12 separate regions in the United States, so that there wasn't centralized control. But over the course of decades and policy that I continue to truth bomb the con and inform you of, led to this mammoth disaster. And what I'm trying to do, guys, is I'm trying to create a new movement. It's just the antithesis of the Trump insurrection. I'm trying to be Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction when she got an adrenaline shot shoved into her heart and she frickin' woke up like a pin out of a heroin comatose. I'm trying to do that to you, America, because everything is on the line and everything has been stolen from us. I'm talking about life, liberty, and justice for all. I'm talking about integrity of the law, where no man is above the law, where everybody has the same shot and the same opportunity to move forward, and really it's on us. Now, I also believe, because I'm a progressive, and I'm a progressive, if you want to know the truth, going back to, some television references of like Thomas Shelby and, Peaky Blinders. Absolutely love that program. And, here's a great interest, a great on-ramp to the history of the world that created the situation that's very similar to what we're going through. Like, one thing I said yesterday was that every day our lives, whatever happens today, is kind of an amalgamation of what came before and then what will propel us forward to the next step. That's the way history is, right? And so in Peaky Blinders, the writers were just so spectacularly knowledgeable of that era, where it turns out the Shelbys were really, in the Peaky Blinders, a real deal, as was this guy Mobley, who, if you watch the program, where we're going, I think, in season 6 that I think is about to arrive, which will be spectacular. But really, in a nutshell, you kind of know where I'm coming from. Watch Peaky Blinders and see Thomas Shelby, because I'm the guy that would go after Mobley, sort of thing. Okay, that's where I stand. And ultimately, to take it to a bigger reference, I was late to the game for Game of Thrones. And I think I didn't start tuning in until it was on the air for 5 seasons. And I just completely ignored the hype, much like many people have ignored the con that's been out there for some time, until suddenly it struck me. And then when I saw it literally, I couldn't stop watching it. I watched it like 5 times in a row. There was a time period where I couldn't watch anything else but Game of Thrones, because it became an addiction. And, ultimately, to stay within the theme of the kind of person that I am, really what struck me and what I'm all about in real life is what Jon Snow said at the end in season 5. He said, when enough people make false promises, words stop meaning anything, then there are no more answers, only better and better lies. That's it in a nutshell. Look, mainstream media is chasing the dragon. Everybody wants to get like a tiny piece of whatever they think their audience is. They want to create this echo chamber, like we're talking about this, where the other guy's the bad guy. We need to frame and formulate everything like that's going to fit within that realm. And that's the whole scheme of Rachel Maddow, for example. And the same goes for Tucker Carlson. The same goes for, quite frankly, Anderson Cooper and CNN. I very rarely mention CNN because I honestly think they're a joke. I watch CNN sometimes just to be baffled by how extraordinarily buffoonish and clueless their anchors are to what it is that constitutes this world that we live in. I don't know how many times I've seen, for example, Anderson Cooper ask a rhetorical question looking like he's using another movie reference. Who was that? Ben Stiller played the clueless model. God, I can't think of his name, and I know many of you out there are thinking of it. That's who I think of, Anderson Cooper. I mean, he just reminds me of Ben Stiller as that model asking just ridiculously rhetorical questions with being clueless with how the world works. And that guy probably gets paid $18 to $20 million, with bonuses and everything else. And I think he comes from, oh God, who was the big steel? I know he comes from one of the titans of the 1900s, and I can't think of that name either because I'm thinking of so many others. They'll come to me in a moment. But look, the truth holds true today as did yesterday. Okay? We let our financial system get away with the largest financial terrorism in the history of the world. They buried tens of millions of people around the world through an illegal enterprise, starting with the mortgage-backed securities that were all through this chain, this pipeline, this unbelievable business model where everybody had to lie they just lied over and over and over on documentation, fabrication, on all of the things that constituted what ultimately put, the loans of these houses and portfolios that were, sent around the world to pensions. And they blew up, starting with targeting African Americans and then ultimately winding up in the white working class. And now they've got us all at each other's throats. Black Lives Matter is very important because of the systemic corruption and racism that relates to, policing as well as in the prison industrial complex, which is insanity to me after I, learned this stuff over the course of the last 20 years. But so too is, this monumental betrayal to the working class of this people over literally decades, man. We killed the golden goose through financialization, through a form of economics called neoliberalism that basically got rid of our manufacturing capacity, sent it all overseas so that we could have middlemen basically gut that which we were earning, and they made fees on it around the world. And then ultimately when they blew up the world because they tried to pretend that we were still a consumer culture based on these lies that I'm telling you, that actually had the power that we once did, because our economy was so much stronger and so much more robust than it now is, so much more widespread, quite frankly. It always has fits and starts and ups and downs and everything else, but this is ridiculous, guys. This is just a monumentally clever, diabolical grift machine made up of the smartest amongst us who believe they're above the law. They're aristocrats, They're people that think that the law doesn't apply to them. And it doesn't, because those who are actually in power end up getting their financial their campaign contributions from the system. And they continue to make choices that ultimately destroy the American people. It's a betrayal of monumental proportions. And so what I'm trying to create is the great resurrection. And the resurrection is for people that have been betrayed by the system, destroyed in the courts, the millions of people who never had a fair shot, that got set up, and then the courts knew it, and then they spit them out the other side through this whole corrupt system. I know there's tens of millions of you out there, literally. And then that co-joins with all of the other elements of people that have been betrayed by the system. And what I'm trying to tell you guys is that we have to come out of our silos. We have to come out of our independent lens where everything just kind of fits a specific end game, to where maybe we can, hopefully, purge and create justice and those sorts of things that we do. But I mean, just look at how these things get isolated, right? For example, the folks with the Columbine mass murders just won like a $70 million lawsuit, I think, 10, 12 years later, after their children were, murdered. I'll never forget Alex Jones saying that they weren't, and the whole thing was a, deep state. this is a big problem. That side of the fence. No, children were absolutely murdered by a freaking madman who had access to ammunition and a weapon that were, military grade weapons to murder innocent children. I mean, how could you ever look at that and pretend like, or not pretend, but just go the other way? Like that was all set up in some sort of, diabolical deep state, missive. I mean, the psychology of this stuff is just insane to me, and now I'm talking to 140,000 plus people. Finally. Look, I know what I'm talking about. I've gone the distance. And what it means to be a muckraker is exactly what it sounds like. I had to dig, man. I didn't sit in my, kitchen and come to you like Wayne's World, like a lot of people do in their podcasts starting off until they, wind up being a big deal like Joe Rogan or Russell Brand, who have probably teams and scores of people that are working for them that, put that stuff together. But yeah, man, I'm doing this on the fly. And I'm truth bombing the con because I got all the freaking details because I pulled the threads, man. And I pulled off the greatest, and the revelation of the greatest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in history that has become our system. I don't know what I got to tell you, man. You don't live in a nation of liberty and justice for all. You do not live in a nation where the laws are equal. We fought against the Confederacy for a reason. The Civil War happened for a reason. We fought against King George III and monarchies for a reason. We created separation of powers for a reason. We stormed the beaches of Normandy to get rid of the fascists for a reason. And then we had, of course, the civil rights movement led by the courage of Martin Luther King, who actually used our the truths that we put down on paper. He just wanted to actually live true to what we put down on paper. I just want us to live true to what we are. I'm tired of the lie. I'm tired of ignorance. I'm tired of stupidity. I'm tired of people getting destroyed by something they can't see or understand. If you can't see your enemy, you certainly can't fight it. And I'm not professing a violent revolution. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we need to do that. If we could literally turn on the millions of people that have been victimized by this stuff. And if you think that 2008 was a long time ago, I'm telling you, 2019, the same thing happened. And then during COVID, we had all sorts of insanity that took place with the CARES Act, where they sent $47 billion of aid for people for rental income and everything else to the states, of which a lot of that, I think going back to last August, I saw numbers that only $5 billion of that were used. So then where'd the other $42 billion go, right? That's what happened in 2012-ish, 2012 to 2015, based on what we call the Home Affordable Modification Program. And after the national mortgage settlement, where there was a $25 billion fine that was assessed to Wall Street that they paid, and everybody thought, okay, game over. Well, that money went to the states, for the states to recoup the losses that they'd had because of the housing collapse, and everybody was in on it. AGs were in on it. I'll tell you right now, Kamala Harris in California was the biggest mirage in terms of her claims that she actually, fought on behalf of Californians to be able to, set things right with all of the fraud that took place in that state. I'm sure millions of people in California just got thrown in the meat grinder. And look at the homelessness there. I to this day scratch my head every single day wondering why it's possible that everybody in California who covers this stuff, from the LA Times, to what I guess the Guardian in San Francisco, and of course the New York Times, they've shown, this massive, wreckage, human wreckage of homelessness in California. And it's like nobody ties it to what it is that I'm telling you that's in the con. Everybody was set up on this stuff to get them out of their houses and steal their houses that went back to BlackRock. The guys who were there the whole time, who actually sold these mortgage-backed securities for a very long time before it blew up, and they were the ones that got put in position by then, AG. What am I saying? AG. I'm trying to think of what his title was at this time, but Timothy Geithner had famously said the American people are literally foam on the runway for the banks. That's what we were. Foam on the runway for the banks. Because Timothy Geithner somehow backdoors Larry Fink and Blackstone into the situation to where they become the administrator of the Federal Reserve emergency stimulus that comes through Ben Bernanke and John Paulson through the Hank Paulson through the bazooka that unleashed $29 trillion to the guys that buried us. They paid $250 billion a fine and nobody knew that was the wiser. Meanwhile, millions of you, like me, got spit out of the system. How many of you lost your families to divorce, suicides? The pressure that I went through and continue to go through with my family is incredible. It's incredibly painful. The suffering is immense. It's not okay. None of it's okay. We have to seek justice. We have to have our systems operate with integrity, which means that the FBI and the DOJ and the SEC and everyone that's these institutions that are there to make sure that finance and corruption don't run away with it. Because that's what we learned after the Great Depression. That's what Ferdinand Pecora, a Sicilian immigrant prosecutor who came out of Tammany Hall, who didn't know finance, but he understood corruption, was able to get inside what all of the big players were doing, and he was able to expose what they did during a time period where we had 25% unemployment, where there were Hoover camps in the middle of Central Park and all over the country, where the news media actually covered the trial to where they got exposed, and I'm talking the CEOs of Wall Street got exposed for betraying the American people. And by the way, that does take us back to Peaky Blinders, because that's where Peaky Blinders ended amidst all of that crisis. But going back to where we are now, that's what we need. That's what the con is. That's what the con has always been. And by the way, that's what AOC and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have been avoiding since we put it on their radar. You know, I mean, I swear to God, all the people who claim that they're against corruption, they're not. I can tell you right now, Elizabeth Warren met with the whistleblowers that were in the con, at least her gatekeepers did, and then they basically pushed them aside. They didn't want to know. This whole thing was a cover-up. The whole thing was a cover-up led by Barack Obama, through Eric Holder, through the Wall Street meritocratous Democratic Party, that ultimately buried what it is that I'm telling you, that led to MAGA, and then the revolution or the insurrection, and all of these things that have happened since were a train wreck because we don't have integrity. You can't fight what you can't see, and you can't fight what you don't know. It's all in the con. www.thecon.tv, and please go to YouTube and check out Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs the Con. Please like, please subscribe, please share with the world. This is the only way we can come together. And it's easy as just watching stuff, learning stuff, and then going, Patrick is telling me the truth. And then sharing like your life depends on it, because it does. And then hopefully we can all come together, because I'll tell you, lastly, when I saw the insurrection last year on January 6th, I thought to myself, the first thing that popped into my mind was, A, how anybody didn't see this coming a mile away, because it was all over social media, and I certainly saw it. I mean, we saw all the MAGAs partying down in Trump's hotel like 3 days in advance. Everybody knew this thing was coming. So when you watch mainstream media, say like, oh, it was a big, what? I will be interested to learn to see if Blackwater was involved and to what extent. If I disappear because I'm asking these kinds of questions, do me a favor, please go to thecon.tv and go to Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs the Con, because that'll be my voice. I'm in it to win it, man. I'm battling for the soul of the United States and the future of the world, because I know we can overcome this madness. If we can purge corruption, we will create the most amazing renaissance in history. We need 10 million people fed up going to Washington together to demand that we purge corruption and that the United States government create a new Pecora hearing led by, quite frankly, the people that are in the con. Am I the guy that's going to lead it? No, dude. I'm just like you. I'm just a regular American citizen who got fucked, and I didn't like it. and I went out and did something about it, and now I'm handing it to you on a platinum platter. Together, we can overcome. Onwards and upwards.